on our FM discussion, interesting topics that we thought may be a good idea to keep our brains up and running in this lovely 2021. So we all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and like Craig, our other lecturer, always used to say, let it not be the other way around. But everything is going well in the offices of Global FM, and we are happy to host another FM discussion session. It seems as if the people, our learners, are really enjoying our sessions, so we are glad to host them. So for this particular session, we are going to focus on the management of water as a scarce resource in our buildings, as March is National Water Month in the whole of the universe. So we thought it will be a good idea to focus on the management of water then as a scarce resource. Now, before I introduce our speakers, some of the faces you may know, just a little bit of a logistics arrangements. We suggest that during the course of the presentations, there will be 2 people that will be speaking. And during the course of the presentations, please feel free to chat in, to write some questions down in your chat option of your screen. And then towards the end of the session, we will then discuss the questions that the people have then added. Perhaps if you then also would be so kind as to also just note to whom you are directing your specific question. The first speaker is a person that you know very well on our FM team. One of our lecturers is Peter Karam. And Peter has been a lecturer with Global for ages now. I think it's since 2011, 2012 that Peter has been affording Global his time. Peter holds a mechanical engineering qualification from WITS, and he used to be working with one of the large FM companies in the country, and taking care of some of the mechanical aspects, hard services of that particular company here and also internationally. But he also holds a BTEC in business administration, also from the Technikon of the Witwatersrand. And then that's the one part of our presenters. So Peter will be kicking off an introduction from a general point of view, a facilities expert point of view. And then Lana Wolmarans will then be also focusing on specific methods in terms of the conservation of water and then also the management of water in buildings. Now, Lana is a chemical engineer from Northwest University, and she also holds a master's in environmental engineering from Hungary. So that will be our 2 speakers then for the morning, and we are grateful for your time in advance. Real experts on this field. So Peter, if you would like to start the discussion session from your side, please.
Okay, Sanette, I'll share my screen. If you can just let me know that you see it.
Not as yet.
Okay. Anything yet?
Yeah, we see your presentation now.
Okay, great. So, guys and ladies, as Annette said, we're having basically weekly sessions based on no, well, not weekly. I think this is the second one we're having. The last one we had was a month ago. This one is specifically, this topic is on World Water Day, which happens to be on the 22nd of March 2021. And it is held on the 22nd of March every single year. Okay. To be honest with you, I wasn't aware of this until Sanette made me aware. You can see there's a little hashtag World Water Day if you'd like to join them on Twitter. And if you have a look at the picture over there, you'll see that that is an actual picture in Cape Town a couple of years ago. We're talking about the value of water this year. That's the theme of World Water Day. Is the value of water. I'll give you a bit more history around about that. But the basic thing that we need to, think about today is that our water is running out. Okay, simple as that. We are running out of water for the population of the world. All right, so why do we have Global Water Day? It's held on 22nd of March every year, and it's been going on since 1993. Okay, and believe it or not, some of us don't know about it until Sanette made us aware. So that is 26 years. We're talking about water. And this day celebrates water and raises awareness of the 2.2 billion people living without access to safe water. Can you imagine that? 2.2 billion people without access to safe water. All right. Imagine walking, in your case, 5 kilometers with a bucket in a rural area, mostly in South Africa, to get a couple of liters of water and taking it back, just to have the basic dignity and human right of having water. All right. And this day is set up about taking action to tackle the global water crisis. We are in a crisis. Okay. We know we're in a crisis. The people in Cape Town will tell you what a crisis is when it comes to water. The core focus of Water Day is to support the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal, which is water and sanitation for all by 2030. All right, so that's the goal. You can see it's measurable. We've got 9 years in which to do it. Is that too long? If you think about the way things are, the situation that we're in South Africa specifically, it's 2030, quite a huge target, a long time. Okay. The slogan of Water Day is save water and it will save you. The slogan on water is a slogan on life. Okay. So in other words, if we do not save the water, which is in a crisis at the moment, we are going to make our situation even worse. All right. And how do we save water? What do? We take it for granted. Most of us that are middle class, upper class, we take water for granted. We need to consider everybody who needs safe and water, and we need to save it. Wasting water is a no-no. Okay, so the history of this previous and global water days It goes back to 92, the year in which the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in Rio took place. The United Nations General Assembly at that same time adopted a resolution by which 22 March of each year was declared World Day for Water, to be observed starting in 93. This year, the theme is valuing water. What value do we place on water? Not necessarily currency value, but the actual value of having water or not water. Like we said before in previous slides, water is life. No water, there's no life. Okay. In 2020, it was water and climate change. We've all heard about the climate change. 2019 was leaving no one behind. We can't, I mean, if we're all humans, we talk about the 2.2 billion people, we're leaving them behind. And we shouldn't be leaving them behind. Okay. In South Africa, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's probably a couple of million. Okay. In 2018 was the nature for water. 2017, why wastewater? 2016, better water, better jobs. Okay. 2015 was water and sustainable development. And 2014 was water and energy. We all know about the two things that, besides the petrol price, etc. Water and energy are the two things in South Africa, especially from an electrical point of view, are one of our bigger crises. State-owned entities, municipalities that are not, able to sustain their targets of supplying clean and safe water and also energy. And it also has to do with the socio-economic situation within the country as well. Okay, there's a little bit about the history. Valuing water, which is the topic this short. Okay, water means different things to different people. Think what it means to you. Okay, we drink water, we bath in water, we shower, we swim, various other things. What does it mean to you? When people are in an office, it means one thing. When they're at work, it means another thing because they need water for industry, for farming, for whatever. This conversation is about what water means to you. Okay? How is water important to your home and family life, your livelihood, your cultural practices, your well-being, your local environment? If we don't have water, we can't do a simple thing like brushing our teeth. Otherwise, you're going to have a mint taste in your mouth and walk around with a foam, look like what The Walking Dead. So, how is water important in your home and family life? Your livelihood, what does it mean to you in your job? How do you survive without water? Financially, your culture, there's certain cultural things that require water, your well-being, they say we need to drink water, we need to stay hydrated, and also your local environment. And that's quite important. When you talk about your local environment, think about your home environment, think about your office environment, think about the environment on a micro level and a macro level. What are you doing to save water? A lot of people will just, because they've got the money, they can swim up, fill up their swimming pools every day. Not thinking about, how many liters of their water, as long, if their account comes, they can pay it. In households, schools, and workplaces, water can mean health, hygiene, dignity, and productivity. If we don't bath, we don't have hygiene. If we don't drink water, we can't stay hydrated. Imagine not being able to bath or, not being able to wash, your dignity, and also productivity. If you're thirsty or you cannot produce if there's no water supply, go and think about it. What's worse? What is worse for you than, is it load shedding, no electricity, or no water? I know what it is for me. You know what I'm saying? I can get along without electricity for a while. I can survive, but I cannot survive without water, right? In cultural, religious, and spiritual places, water can mean a connection with creation, community, and oneself. In natural spaces, water can mean peace, harmony, and preservation. Today, water is under extreme threat from growing population, increasing demands of agriculture and industry, and the worsening impacts of climate change. All right, I think Lana has got some good slides that will maybe expand on that a little bit. And when they say, tell us your stories, thoughts, and feelings about water, go to the website. Go to and they've got I did a bit of research, and they've got a place where you can actually type in your thoughts and your feelings. Go onto Twitter, Facebook. There's a number of portals or apps where you can access this whole water saving and value, and tell us your stories, thoughts, and your feelings about water. Okay. When I say us, they're talking about United Nations, and we're talking about globally. By recording and celebrating all the different ways water benefits our lives, we can value water properly and safeguard it effectively for everybody. Okay. Join the conversation what water means to you. So don't take it for granted. There's a conversation to be had. I've seen a lot of conversations on TV lately where we've had a lot of rain in Johannesburg, Gauteng, probably about 2-3 weeks ago. The Vol Dam was at something like 37% at the beginning of the summer season. It went over 100%. They opened some sluice gates. And what did that do? It caused damage. All right. So think about the infrastructure as well. Okay. Think about the infrastructure around, what we're doing. How old is our infrastructure? How well maintained is it to, have those discussions, and who knows who comes up with an idea that, just might save you some water. Simple things. I've always said, you don't have to become complex. You know what? I actually stuck a pipe up my gutter and used a creepy crawly hose. So when it rains, it fills up my swimming pool, so that it's not runoff water or going, somewhere else, and just going nowhere. So it's something, think about things. Today, water is under extreme threat from growing population, increasing demands on agriculture and industry, and worsening impacts of climate change. I think we've discussed that. As societies balance the demands on water resources, many people's interests are not being taken into account. So what do we do? Yes, in many of the big cities, etc., not a problem. People take interest in us. But if you're in a rural area or you're in a poor country, it just doesn't matter. Or if you're a country that is water, let's say water wealthy, then it's a different story. How do they value water? So this year's theme on World Water Day is about what water means to people, its true value, and how can we better protect this vital resource. The value of water is about much more than its price, as I've said before. It's not about the currency. It's enormous and complex value for our households, culture, health, education, economics, and the integrity of natural environment. You know, often we look at, you know, TV and so Ramaphosa says this, and we're getting new economics and we're growing the economy and we're going to provide so many jobs. I don't know how much water they're going to require. Do we have the infrastructure and the resources to supply that economy? Because if it's going to manufacturing and, you know, things like that, and the economy, there's less water for us to drink or to use for our own personal use. And if we overlook any of these, we risk mismanaging this finite. What does finite mean? It means it's not infinite. You know, if we don't have rain for a couple of years, it's finite, it's finished. It's not infinite, and it's irreplaceable. How many times have we seen people and our infrastructure where there's so much sewage going into our water sources that we need for drinking and for, you know, clean and safe water? Support catalyzing conversations about water by using the social media assets and engaging in digital discussions, like I said just now, through @Water2Me and @World Water Day. So have those discussions, have a look, see what ideas you come up with for your home office, your friends, yourself, personally. What are you doing at wastewater? I used to brush my teeth in the shower. I think it was great. Shave in the shower. I didn't realize probably using, you know, maybe 15, 20 liters of water I didn't need to use because it was convenient for me. And so I didn't have other people's interests in mind. Now I have that consciousness to say, okay, let me use as little as possible to do as much as I can. Okay. When we come to facilities management, which is what we're in, FM is a wide space. It's offices, it's industry, it's farming. We've heard before, FM is no more just an office environment. It could be any environment that we could do FM services in. Okay. Think about your equipment that uses water. Think about water-cooled cooling towers that water evaporates into thin air. Okay. Could we change to air-cooled? Is it, you know, something that we could look at over there? How do we manage water leaks? Taps, toilets, roofs. If you look at your roofs and your water leaks, what happens to that water? It causes secondary damage, first of all. Second of all, it just goes to waste. All right, where it might have, you know, a source of where it could go to and be used again. Metering, and I think I've seen Lana's presentation, and she's talking about measuring there. That's will make your head spin. Okay. Do not use firefighting hose reels and hydrants for general use in your facility management. It's not there for that use. Okay. And the main thing, if you look at the website, all they want us to do is learn, share on those platforms, and take action. Whatever how big, however small. At the end of the day, water is equal to life, to everything living, and to every living thing on earth. Think about it. I can't really think of anything that doesn't require water to survive. I really cannot, you know, I might be, and I'm talking about live, you know, I'm not talking about a stone or something like that. So, you know, that is basically it, and it's how we value it and how we manage it, how we save it, how we make it safe, and think about it, get involved, have discussions, go look around your buildings and see what you can do. Okay, thank you very much. I think Sanette, if there's any questions, we'll take them later. That's it from me.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter. I see there's already a question that came in from Zipukazi. We'll focus on that towards the end of the session. Thank you so much, Peter. Lana, would you care to then also discuss the specific ways in terms of how to manage water in buildings, please?
Can you just confirm, Sanet, if you can see the screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. I think you bring up a really interesting point in regards to people not knowing about World Water Day. A fun fact is that there is actually a World Toilet Day as well, which is in November. And I think more people have access to cell phones than have access to toilets. And that's quite a shocking and sad statistic. But anyway, let me get into it. So as Sanet introduced me, my name is Lana, and I work for a company called Aquafiction. And we work with a lot of facilities and facility managers as well. And so I'd just like to talk to you about what I then discuss with them in terms of water efficiency. So Aquafiction is, like I said, a water management company, and we help our clients understand, conserve, and manage water at their facilities. So this includes water monitoring, reduction in consumption, backup systems we install as well, use of supplementary sources, so that could be groundwater from the boreholes or sumps, or rainwater harvesting measures, as well as then management systems. So all of this can fall together under one management system, essentially. So I always like to start off my presentation by going like really back to basics. I'm not going to go through the water cycle, but it's very important to remember, like Peter said, this is a finite resource. So we're not ever creating more water. There is water that is replenished through the water cycle, but the amount of water we have is the same as far back as when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth. And so we have to keep that in context when we are using water, basically in our everyday lives as well. So just briefly, the definition of a watershed. So this is an area that's bounded by mountains or hills, from which all rainwater flows to a single body of water, like a lake or stream or a river. Unfortunately, in South Africa, we don't have too many major large rivers, which I guess is part of our problem, considering we are classified as a semi-arid country. So the reason I bring up this what a watershed is also referred to as a water catchment. Gauteng's water situation is quite unique because we are located at the highest point of the watershed or the catchment area. So that is, when the rain falls, it's always tending to flow away from us into the three catchments you can see here: the Crocodile, West Marico, the Olifants catchment, and the Vaal River catchment. And so you've all heard about the integrated Vaal River system. I'm sure that provides the water to the Gauteng areas. But this system is constantly trying to pump water back into basically our economic hub. And so because there are so many people here, this aggravates the situation for water and water scarcity in the Gauteng region. So on the left, there is a graph for the integrated Vaal River system. The red is the supply, the demand graph, and the blue is the supply graph. So you see, these two haven't or not predicted to intersect at any point. You'll see the supply takes a bit of a step up at some point, and that's when the Lesotho Highlands Water Project is supposed to come online. I don't know if you've recently seen the news that this has been postponed once again. And so we have a bigger problem that we need to deal with. And even this major water project that has been ongoing for such a long time won't save us from this situation. So on the right is just an explanation of the water supply gap, which is projected to be 17% by 2023. I mean, yeah, by 2030. And so that sounds counterintuitive, because basically what this means is that at this moment, we're already using more water than we have. And that sounds like it's beyond science. But basically, it means that, well, I like to equate it to sort of going into debt. You can go to a bank, you can loan some money, and you can spend that money on whatever you want, or you can get a credit card and do whatever you want with it. But at the end of the day, someone needs to be responsible for this behavior. And unfortunately, it's us, we're going to be suffering. So we need to be taking the appropriate actions to deal with this issue. So the causes of water scarcity, I think Peter mentioned them in his presentation as well. Population growth is a major factor. In South Africa, the population grew in the last 60 years from about 17 million to 60 million very recently. And so 3 times the number of people now have to use the same water sources. And like I said, it is a water scarce country. So more people sharing the same water sources is of course going to lead to some tensions in this regard. Climate change is the next big factor. This has been known to change weather patterns and that type of thing. A good example is snowfall in Lesotho. Like I mentioned, we do need the Lesotho Highlands Water Project to supply us with water. And so if the snowfall is not adequate or not the same as previous years, this can severely impact us in our daily lives when it comes to water use. The next one's infrastructure mismanagement. The percentage of non-revenue water in South Africa is actually a shocking 41%. So the majority of this is through water leaks. So what I mean by non-revenue water is any water that between the water treatment plant and our meters, no one is paying for that. So the government is not getting any revenue from this water. And so this 41% is the average for the country. There are some municipalities where this has been managed appropriately. So Cape Town, I think, was at 70% now after the water crisis there. But there are some municipalities where things are going much, much worse. And so it's so shocking to imagine that our infrastructure is at such a bad point that we're losing almost 50% of our water sources before it even reaches a final consumer. And so, unfortunately, when it does reach a final consumer, water use is often only about 50% efficient. And so that's what we're trying to target now, is to decrease this efficiency, or inefficiency rather. Lastly, water pollution. Peter mentioned this as well. The World Wildlife Fund highlighted these pollution sources for water in South Africa specifically, but poorly treated sewage effluents. I think we all know many of our sewage treatment works are completely overloaded and are often bypassed. So this is a major issue. But then the good thing is, if we decrease our water waste, we decrease the volume of water that actually reaches the sewage treatment works. So that means that if there's a smaller volume, more of the sewage can actually be handled by the sewage treatment works instead of being bypassed. So in South Africa, just a quick pie chart of what we use water for. Irrigation is about 60%, so that is for crops and agriculture, and this is quite standard over the whole world, although there is some advances in terms of using drip irrigation and that type of thing to make water use in the agricultural sector more efficient. But urban water use accounts for 25% of water in the country, and this includes commercial and retail applications, which are some of our major clients. And this also includes what you would call light industrial use as well. So for many people, it's easy to see the connection between water and food, or water scarcity and food, and drought and food scarcity, because the two are so intimately connected. We understand that if it didn't rain, our crops are not going to grow as efficiently or not grow at all and lead to crop failures. But few people make the true connection between water and energy. So the fact of the matter is, water takes a significant amount of energy to treat and pump to where we are. Like I said, in the integrated water river system in Gauteng, we are constantly pumping water up so that people can use it. And so when we waste water, we are wasting this energy as well. And so in a country where we are currently going through load shedding as we speak, it means that if we are wasting water, we are directly wasting our own electricity on top of that. So it's important to keep in mind that these three things are more intimately connected than we realize. So people have been proposing many large-scale solutions, desalination plants, water from air, building more dams even, and the use of boreholes or rainwater harvesting, all of which are good ideas. But in practice, this takes a large amount of capital input. And so even if you're in the facilities management, this is not something that like an average human being can necessarily make happen. But even from a facilities management perspective, you would need to like justify that in your budget and prove that there's going to be a cost saving. And often it's just sort of too much of an effort to get to the point of saying, okay, we're going to build the in-house desalination plant because it's just too expensive. So Aquafriction actually proposes a different approach, and this is to optimize water use efficiency. And so we do this by using what we refer to as the drop principle, in which we collect data through monitoring. So I'll get to that in a second. We then refine the data by placing it in context, seeing what our options are, and picking one of those options to proceed. And so this is a continuous loop. As soon as we have applied whatever we decided to proceed with, we can get new data and see, but oh, this is working, we are saving water, and you can go on and on like that until you have a facility basically optimized in terms of its water usage. So basically, the bottom line when it comes to water monitoring is that if you can measure it, you can manage it. So installing a check meter and then with some sort of water monitoring, this allows you to access frequent high-resolution water consumption data. Alarms for excessive use can easily be set up by many of the platforms available to do this water monitoring. Abnormalities can be identified as soon as they occur, and then it provides the data to base water savings initiatives on, like I said. So this is an example of what water monitoring data can look like. This is sort of from the platform that we use, which is known as ZNet. And if you'll just take note, there are some bar graphs. They always occur at midnight. So that's the dead of night. And in this case, this facility doesn't have any flow through the middle of the night, as you can see by the blue graphs, meaning so that there isn't a leak. If we see any water in the middle of the night that's flowing constantly, that's indicative of a leak, and you can then go and do something about it if you know that it's there. So an example of a graph where we saw sort of an anomaly is in August of last year. We have a client. This property doesn't use a lot of water at all. You'll see from the earlier section of the graph, the graph is for about a week. And so from the earlier section of the graph, you can see they have almost zero consumption for 3 days out of this week. And then suddenly their water consumption spikes to the end of the week. And this is not what we expected to see on the site at all. And this allowed us, because we were monitoring the situation for our client, to call them up and say, hey, you need to do something about it because there's a crisis here. Otherwise, it might have taken them 3 or 4 days. And at the volume of water that this would have been a really expensive issue for them. So if you install water monitoring at a facility where you're working at, you can have the power to check this type of thing every day and make sure that things are within the normal range. Or if you see high use, but you were irrigating, or there was something that could explain it, that would make sense. But otherwise, it also gives you the power to investigate. So water monitoring, and these data loggers come in many shapes and sizes. If you, for example, have a backup tank system, you can use these data loggers to send you pressure data or flow volumes from council or from your rainwater harvesting. So there's a lot of options that are available. But of course, all of this sort of comes with a different price tag. So our clients are mainly educational institutions, schools, that type of place, and then office parks and malls. And their biggest water users are toilets, irrigation, and taps and hand washing situations. So we do have some clients that have manufacturing, but we do not specialize in their water treatment, for example, more in their water monitoring and efficiency. So things that commonly can go wrong at any facility is broken, burst, or cracked pipes. Especially if they are hidden, they can be very difficult to find. If you don't know you're supposed to be looking for a leak and there's a cracked pipe under the pavement, you're never going to find that thing. Over irrigation is another major issue. Some gardeners are very enthusiastic about their irrigation systems, and they, produce some very beautiful green gardens, but at what cost is the question. And then running toilets. These are a major culprit that people are often surprised by. But a toilet that's running, even if it's just making that like shh sound, we've all heard that, especially like in a public bathroom, that can be 100 liters an hour minimum, and it's often more. So water monitoring is really powerful, like I mentioned, in terms of irrigation. The first 4 days, there are these big blue spikes every day at the same time. And we had to call our client to confirm, but we immediately suspected this was irrigation that's set on a timer. So it can be easy to identify sort of what the data means if you know what's happening at the facility at any time. So I like to do an example because it just, for some people, they can't think in terms of the liters of water. It's easier for them to think in terms of cash. So like I said, a toilet that's making that sort of soft shh in the background can easily be leaking 100 liters of water per hour, but it can be much more. As soon as you see sort of like a lot of water coming through, it can be 400-500 liters an hour easily. And if that doesn't get addressed, that's just really wasting money and water, of course. So this quick calculation, if you multiply 100 by 24, you get 2,400 liters of water per day. And if you multiply that by 30 days, so let's say this issue isn't sorted out quickly, that's 72,000 liters of water per month, or 72,000 kiloliters. In city of Joburg, their commercial and industrial, their highest bracket tariff costs about 45 rands per kiloliter for water, and then another 34 approximately rands for sanitation. So altogether, that's about 5,660 rands, which one toilet has now cost you in a month. And so that should really drive the point home that you can't just be paying your utilities bills without taking a look at what you're actually paying for, because you may just be paying for 5 toilets that are leaking softly in a corner. To make things worse, if this 100 liter per hour leak for 30 days is approximately the same amount of water as 6 4-person households would use in a month. So that's really shocking. So the options for dealing with, if you've installed monitoring for dealing with your leaks, is to look at leak detection. And by this, I don't mean getting out specialized equipment or something like that. You can do your own type of leak detection if you have monitoring by installing, if there are valves that you can close at a facility. If you have, let's say, 5 valves which isolate 5 sections, you can close a valve and, if possible, overnight, and in the morning take a look at the water monitoring, and if the leak has persisted, you can know it's not that section of the building that has the leak, or and so you can do this and eventually isolate the area where the leak is, take another thorough look, and if you can't find it, then get in a plumber. This will save you a lot of money, because gas leak detection and that type of equipment is really expensive. So you can optimize irrigation. There are many ways to do this. I'd say begin by at least having your irrigation heads sprinkling onto the grass or into the garden, and not anywhere onto the pavement, because I have a colleague who likes to say the row's not going to grow. So it's definitely worth looking at these options. Then installation of efficiency devices, preventative maintenance, and the alternative sources, we're going to get into a bit more. We suggest installation of efficiency devices. We have 2 that we use a lot because they're really cost effective. The one is a flow regulator. So this can be installed into the braided hose, which limits the amount of flow to about 3 liters per minute. And this is still a lot of water, don't get me wrong, but it is good enough to not be sort of irritating if you're trying to fill up a bucket or a sink or something fast. But still, if someone forgets that tap open, which we know they like to do in certain types of facilities, like the schools I work for, this just limits the damage, if I can put it like that. And the other one is the aerated. So that's the very pretty spiral one that we use, is about 1.9 liters per minute. It's still plenty of water, especially for washing your hands. We don't want to, in these COVID times, suggest that limit the amount of water people can have so that they can't wash their hands properly. But this also makes a very significant difference. And then where possible, we suggest installation of interrupted flushing mechanisms. These have a sort of dual purpose. They are, they use less water because they only flush while you're holding the lever or the button down, which means sometimes you get 2 or 3 flushes out of one system. Because the idea is not to drain the whole system every time that you need to flush. And then the second thing is, if you happen to have a water outage, that means you can flush 2 or 3 times before your toilet is sort of empty and should be avoided using. So that just gives you a little bit more room to move if there is a water outage. You know you can flush the toilet once or twice before things become really chaotic. The unfortunate thing with these mechanisms is they can only be installed on regular cistern toilets. So if we're looking at flush masters or Gibberit toilets, it's not exactly an option. Gibberit toilets, in our experience, need a lot of maintenance. There's a lot of grit in the water sometimes, and these can upset the inlet mechanism for a Gibberit. And so making sure you know the proper maintenance, or you're in contact with the person who is doing the, because they have a system for maintenance, so they come sort of with a warranty. So to make sure that those Gibberits are maintained properly is very important. So this is just an example of a graph of a school before we installed an efficiency devices. So you'll see on the left, they have this flow through the night, because every time when the bar graph is, there's still this green data. But then we sorted out that leak, and they still had quite high peaks, easily reaching up to 25 kiloliters a day peaks. And so when we installed the efficiency devices, you can see the size of those peaks got much less sharp. And so that's just an example of the difference these types of devices can make, even though they seem so silly. but the data is proving their value. Then lastly, I did speak about preventative maintenance for the gibberids, but this is important for any system. We do suggest installation of PRVs and strainers if you can after the municipal meter. This is just because it protects the infrastructure and it minimizes the potential for leaks by regulating the pressure. Because if you have a water outage, there's a chance that when the pressure is restored, it will come through at such a force that it will damage any leak points, weak points that there were in pipes, and then preventing debris from entering the water reticulation network. Because, like I said, for gibberid toilets, this can be quite an issue, or with other inlet valves as well. So it's only after doing all of that that we suggest installing alternative water sources and municipal backup systems. So this is what we do, part of it. The reason why we suggest making sure your facility is efficient first is because the size of your backup tanks will be much smaller, and this will be more affordable. That's the pure and simple reason. You're wasting less water, so you don't build a tank that's going to feed 5 or 6 leaks, because that's counterintuitive. But we know that the economy is as such that people want to protect their business. By like a few years ago, everyone was getting a generator. Now many people are installing backup systems, and because we can't operate without the water, and that makes sense. But it doesn't help that you build a tank that's just going to be feeding a leak the whole time, because that's not going to save you any money in the long run. Training and awareness is also an important part of what we do. We know that sort of us as Aquafiction, a really small company, we can't do this alone. And so we do try and inform our partners of what our process is and what we suggest, and share this information as much as possible, because we know we have a major problem in terms of water scarcity in the country. So just lastly, we do have a water savings initiative called #SurplusWater2025, because we're trying, and hopefully we will succeed, to decrease that gap, that 17%, so we can reach a water surplus by 2025. And we can do that if we all manage our water demand better. So that's all from me. Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you so much, Lana. Very insightful, very interesting, nice statistics that you gave. Nice practical tips and so forth. And I also think from an FM point of view, if one can constantly communicate to our building users, of course, the importance of the resource to actually use less water whenever they are busy in the buildings per se. Guys, is there, I've got about 4 minutes left. Let me just quickly read to you a question by Zibukazi. If you would like to ask some questions, now would be the time, either to put it in the chat box or we can discuss. Zibukazi says, Peter, isn't there a way that engineers can come up with to ensure that the water from the dams after some hard rains can be shared with large places when the sluices gates are then opened? Almost like a top, it's like a secondary dam downstream. I don't know. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I think Zabakazi, what I saw on TV was you know, a lot of people downstream when the sluice gates were open were complaining because of the poor infrastructure and not being pre-warned of the opening of the sluice gate so they could take their own preventative measures. But I'm sure engineers have thought of ways they could do it. Again, like Lana mentioned, there's always the capital input and the returns of how they can do that. And I think Sanette mentioned possible, you know, building of dams. We know that the municipalities, the cities, the towns, the smaller ones, they are cash stretched. So building of dams costs, billions. It's surely, if you look at the Vol Dam, it's probably 60, 70 years old. It's providing the most of Gauteng's water. Correct me if I'm wrong. However, is it, it was fine, when there were 17 million people at the time. Now we're 60 million. How do we take that surplus water and use it effectively? And that's up to engineering. So a lot of things happen. Like Lana said, roads don't grow, only potholes grow. So before we start even, building things, doing things that create havoc, we need to do environmental impact assessments, risk assessments of what would happen if we did open all the sluice gates. Where would the water go? What damage would it cause? How could we redistribute it into something that we could take this finite resource and use it more effectively and efficiently? So I'm sure they're thinking about it. And I know we've got a lot of good engineers. I know there's a brain drain and, a lot of all of these things. It comes down to people know what they know. It's about implementing and acting. It's about taking the action. And sometimes acting costs a lot of money. And I think that's where, Lana was coming from. It's not, something, the size of a swimming pool that we're talking about here. We're talking about millions of liters of water per minute, flowing out of those sluice gates. So what I also just, comes to mind, I just read this morning as it happened, is that Rand Water has today decided on water restrictions because the demand is exceeding supply in Johannesburg. So it's scary when we think about, demand and supply. And
that was the discussion all week, I believe, for that Rand Water up in Joburg.
Yeah. So it's scary when you start looking at, the graphs that Lana showing, the information, the things that we see on TV. And it's about, our behaviors and what we can do to the infrastructure. And as facility managers, we know about infrastructure. We know about environmental impact assessments, from a building point of view, as well as from, let's look at it at a macro level, building roads, building, all of those, things that, cause the water to be wasted. Those, but what happens is, Lana would probably be more qualified, or is more qualified to say, if environment impact assessment shows you can't do this because this is the effect you're going to have on the environment, positive or negative.
And they also don't come cheaply, eh?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's all about the money. And we saw in one of Lana's slides, the revenue that's been lost that could be used for engineers to implement and act on the ideas and creativity that they could, create savings of water and utilize it more efficiently.
Yeah. So it's interesting, but again, I think there's a huge responsibility on us as facilities managers to actually bring that message across to our building users or the people that's on the different sites. Guys, it seems as if there's not any more questions that comes up in the chat boxes, and our time is also done, will you believe? But it's always interesting how time flies when you're having fun and if you're having some stimulative conversations, eh? So yeah, so thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Thank you so much, Lana, for sharing your expertise with us. Peter, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you, ladies and gents, for attending. Of course, this is always lovely to have an audience and to share our knowledge also with our students and other participants. Next month, April, is the 22nd is actually International Earth Day. So then our session for next month will be on green buildings and how to do green building assessments. And Rochelle Damons, that's also from Global, you know her, you all know her. She'll be hosting it specifically on focusing on green building assessments. She's also a green building assessor, by the way. So thank you so much for your time. Hoping to see you all and more again this time next month. Thank you so much for your attendance. Much appreciated. You must have a great afternoon. Stay safe, and then we'll chat again. Thank you, Keshwa. Thank you, Peter and Lana. Very informative. Thank you so much, everybody. And then stay safe and let's meet again. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lana.